The way that our liturgy of the Word or readings are selected has a certain pattern to it. Usually we read from one of the Gospels, this year from Mark, and then the first reading is mostly from the Old Testament and complements the Gospel. But in between is the second reading, which is quite independent of the other two. And usually we read from one of the letters for about 4 or 5 weeks. And we have been reading from Ephesians, Paul to the Ephesians, and now we open up a new book of the Bible, the letter of James. It will occupy the second slot for 5 weeks, beginning today. It's not a letter in the sense that Paul wrote letters to different communities. This is just a generic letter written to the church. James is concerned more with ethics or behavior than doctrine. He's concerned about how people act more than what they believe. Time and time again, we'll hear James tell us to put our belief into action. In his words that we heard today, we must be doers of the word and not simply hearers. James will tell us we're deceiving ourselves if we think otherwise. In the weeks to come, he'll get more specific on how we as disciples ought to live, how we ought to especially treat those who are in need in our society. A letter such as this is directed to folks like you and me. We're in church, listening to the word, sharing the Eucharist, and we could be tempted to conclude that since we're doing this, we're good Christians. There's a story about a grandmother who took her granddaughter to a Quaker meeting. Now, I've never been to a Quaker meeting, but I understand you just kind of sit there. You might quake a little bit. After a while, the granddaughter said to her grandmother, "When does the service begin?" And the grandmother said, "The service begins when we leave church." In other words, it's in the doing of the word and service that the word really comes alive. Pope Francis says, yes, we do have to pray for the hungry, but afterwards, we need to feed them. Some churches have mats outside their door that when you enter, you read the words, "We enter for worship." And on the way out, the words that you read is, "We exit to serve." Having begun our reading of the letter of James, we need to be conscious in a special way over the next several weeks and see how we are called out to live our Christianity. Every person, every situation is an opportunity for us to put our Christianity into practice. We need to see that every person is created and loved by God, no matter how hard they try to conceal it. If we treat others with dignity and respect, we're welcoming what James describes as the word that has been planted in us and is able to save our souls.